All right, a couple months before the premiere of Wonder Woman, Angela Robinson's movie, Professor Marston and his Wonder Woman, was released. It was in select theaters. It didn't stay out very long. But I think overall, I do like the performances of the movie, even though the story kind of weighs.
I was surprised by this movie. And the reason why is because I think it's a bad trailer. I remember seeing the trailer for this, and I was like, it could work, I guess. I'll wait till streaming. Like, that's kind of my thought process on it, is I don't really feel like I connected with the trailer at all, because I was like, I kind of just felt like I knew where the story beats were going to go.
Yeah.
And even though I was mostly right
and sometimes the trailer, right.
I still enjoyed the overall, like, the character work, the ambience that was given in, the emotional resonance that was there. And who doesn't like taking a look behind the curtain at the creation of a popular character,
Yeah, so let's take a look at the movie Professor Marston and figure out how did Wonder Woman get started.
Yep. Today on Kyle and Nick on Film. So welcome back to the show. Again, we're talking Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, 2017, I think it is.
Yeah.
This film it's got a couple of clues into actually being like a Wonder Woman origin for the comic book, in that, Luke Evans worked with Gal Gadot on Furious 6, and then she ended up
good call, right? Yeah.
And the fact that the Marston family later on in life actually became friends with Linda Carter. I think it was before she actually did Wonder Woman, the show.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting clue, and we've got kind of that
I was gonna bring that
resonance to the whole piece there.
And actually, reality, it was called National Aligned Publication, which is DC Comics, and at the time it was getting junk. So the early 40s, comic books were considered really trash media, and to brighten it up, actually, in reality, DC Comics recruited Professor Marston to write comics to give it a more authentic and an educational background, and he pitched the idea of having a female superhero.
And it's an interesting idea, the fact that Wonder Woman came from a male writer.
Yeah.
And that, like, you expect in some ways that it's going to be because of the time period in which the character was created, but you don't expect that it's from a person who kind of like was seen as a social pariah at his previous job work. Like, it's an interesting backstory to it. We're going to cover, I guess, as it goes down, but it follows Professor William Moulton Marston.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to say.
His polyamorous relationship with his wife and their mistress,
which was true,
was very, very, not okay at the time period. They were seen as social pariahs when people learned of this, and how that all led to the creation of this iconic character. My big flaw with the film actually is that it sells itself on the creation of Wonder Woman, the character. I don't think we really spend enough time with that.
No.
To really hammer in, like, what that means, like how this relationship connects to that. I agree there are connections, but I just don't feel like we've hammered that home.
Right, and it's a character study, much like puzzle. But the selling pitch is, let's talk about Wonder Woman at the year the film Wonder Woman came out, and I think that's a lot of blowback. A lot of people are hesitant to really watch the movie. In fact, it's still kind of a touchy subject with a lot of people, is a 3-person relationship.
Yeah, it's not really, it's not really commonplacely discussed, especially when the ideas that everyone goes to with this kind of a situation too is they're like, someone think of the children, and of course they're being children of this union. Yeah. It complicates things in terms of the viewpoint, how people look into it. It's even right now, it's not as widely looked into as an option.
One of the things I still marvel at is Rebecca Hall in this movie. Fantastic. And I was an advocate when I did my show that she should have been nominated for Best Actress. And I know this doesn't get the publicity that it would even get on the radar, but I think it was one of the best performances of the year.
I agree. I've been a fan of Rebecca Hall since I believe it was The Town. And I really enjoyed her work, kind of in the forefront of things like Iron Man 3, which she didn't really get the attention she deserved. She was the original bad person in that movie before it was changed. But I really enjoy her work whenever she's on film. She just isn't in there enough. The way she has to work here, though, she has to work here being a strong antithesis to William, because she is much stronger than he is. but she also has to be kind of her own moral compass, which is interesting because she's very amoralic when it comes to her normal life. But the way that she looks at this potential relationship is unique in that way.
It's cleverly written character because she's the consciousness of the whole grouping, right? She's she's the little bit of reality. This is the reality of what's happening. This is the consequences. But here she's trying to not accept the reality that she might love this person.
Yeah, and I think that's again, like you said it perfectly. She's the compass, like choosing where to go here, because on its surface, and this is another issue I had kind of with the film, is on its surface, Marston is just a teacher that's hitting on a hot young student. Like, you know, it's not, that's even, like, that's more commonplace than the polyamorous relationship is the professor hitting on the student. And the way that she kind of falls into the middle of it before this happens is she says she's not jealous. You know, she goes, I don't really care what you do. I'm not a jealous person. And her jealousy really is a different form of attraction. But the fact that, like, that I have a problem with the fact that they don't really address the fact that it's a student and a teacher at the beginning of the film.
High gloss.
Yeah, it's not looked upon in the same way because she's a assistant. I don't know.
So there's a little droppings of why, how did this subconsciously this Wonder Woman come about? Obviously, William Marston was an advocate for the suffragette movement, feminists, but a lot of people actually, there's a lot of theories that even his wife had a lot of influence of the creation of Wonder Woman, which she could have. So the Amazons and a lot of the Greek mythology, that was DC wanted Marston to incorporate. He wanted to give a little more emphasis of an educational background to this character, and also a little bit of a teasement that Wonder Woman having a lasso. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. When you say that though, that's kind of the cuttingness of what I wanted out of the film. Was I wanted to know where these individual pieces of the mythology came from. And you don't have to hit me over the head with it, but like they keep cutting to this moment where he's talking to Josette Frank, I think, who is from the comics.
The interview, yes.
And the interview sequence, he kind of explains himself, but it's done so quick and so haphazardly that, like, I want to dive into that. I want to know about that. Yeah. And the film is not that long, so I feel like there's time to do that. The focus is more on the relationship. It's more on the character interactions, which I appreciate. I really enjoyed that. But I wanted to know what that meant for Wonder Woman. And instead, Wonder Woman's kind of an afterthought.
It almost makes me think that maybe there's some things they cannot digest or reveal. So Angela Robinson, she's waited. A lot of TV. She's written for a lot of TV, and she tried to make this movie for 10 years. So this idea that it came out just to combat Wonder Woman, we always talk about it's the luck of timing in the industry. So it's a happenstance that this movie came out just a couple months before the film Wonder Woman came out. It's one of those eerie coincidences that we get when we critique movies.
Well, it's funny you say that too. I was actually just watching an interview with Oliver Stone where he said, I wasted 10 years of my life on projects that never actually happened. Because that's how it works, is you can try and just something never gets off the ground. And if it's a passion project for you and you want to happen, that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right, like Shane Black was working with Mel Gibson for 10 years on a project, and then Mel Gibson's meltdown happened.
And it just happens. And I think, like, Robinson, not well known for her film work. I know she did Debs back in 2004 and then Herbie Fully Loaded in 2005. Like, not great track record for being able to, like, pick and choose your projects. You know, she'd done some work. She's done a number of television projects that are very notable, but just didn't have the lift for that. And that's maybe one of the reasons why the film doesn't reach to that wider audience appeal, is that it is a personal project for her. And one of the reasons we may not have been able to dive into things like what influenced Wonder Woman is that the Marston family was not involved in production at all. And that's why they openly criticized the film, was they were upset that, some people said that Elizabeth and Olive never actually had a sexual relationship. That it was more just kind of like an understanding or an emotional attachment.
Yes.
And then they were also upset that they just weren't involved in kind of fact-checking the film. And I've said this a number of times, you don't need facts 100% for making a movie. If you want to know the facts, go read the book. There's something to find. That we're making movies here. So you don't need that 100%, but maybe that's why we kind of are missing our Wonder Woman backstory that we wanted.
One of the other missing elements is Marston was actually obsessed with lying. He was completely obsessed with finding ways of how we can detect people lying. In fact, he invented the components of what we do as a lie detector, and of course Wonder Woman having a mechanic that you have to tell the truth. And that is something that's never really investigated, and it's very well documented. He had this obsession of trying to figure out ways of figuring out when people are lying through mannerisms, behaviors, as well as mechanical.
You know, we don't talk enough about, as a society, about how unique Wonder Woman is as a character. And I'm not talking because she was like the most popular female superhero, but like the things like, you know, the lasso of truth, you know, the Amazon background and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that are unique to her that are just like, yeah, like the lasso of truth is a weird tool to have. It's like, you know,
they don't really, I mean, they showed a little bit, but Marston did love aviation. He loved airplanes. They show a little bit of the picnic stuff. There's a lot of picnics in this movie. And he gets gifted a crystal clear they give him a crystal clear airplane, which is kind of a metaphor of another personality putting into Wonder Woman of his emphasis. So
yeah, the invisible jet that kind of never really gets mentioned.
No,
again, like I want to know more about like where did this idea really come from, because it's got to be more than just I had a glass jet playing. Like,
so I do like the set direction is actually pretty good. The costuming is pretty good. They did a lot of, I put them in the notes, earth tone colors are immense. I know we're doing a timepiece, but here they're really emphasis of just trying to ground it in earth kind of an atmosphere, a little element of reality a little bit.
Yeah, there's a warmth to the film then. And I mean, since we are seeing our three lead characters at their most vulnerable moments a lot of the time, the warmth does help. It's not this like cold, forbidding, you know, look at these people. It's saying like this is how they lived, this is how they loved, and that's aided by those really warm colors.
And now I like the costume choices because they're wearing costume like the full costume. There are suits and coats and everything. They're all dressed up. But then when the Olive shows a presentation of what kind of Wonder Woman could be, it gives a punch. Like, okay, wow, that's a little more.
Yeah, well, and again, it digs into the fact then that, like, you know, Olive says that joke line where she's like, you need to change Wonder Woman's clothing. It's just atrocious. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And maybe that's again like where that leverage of like the costuming aids in the storytelling, the costuming aids in the character development. And that's what I wanted to dive into was like, who let this guy in the time of like looking through the boards and stuff, who let this guy give Wonder Woman this kind of outfit? Like,
another thing is Oliver Platt is in this. And then when I watched it, I was like, yes, this fits perfect. The DC publisher editor. But here he is. I like that he doesn't really bombard himself in the scenes with Luke Evans, but you know that's always a presence and it's a lot of harsh contrast, right?
He gives a good amount of
weariness
when he has to, you know. He kind of did the same thing in X-Men First Class, where he was like, he's not even really in the movie that much. You could forget he's in it, but but when he's there, he peppers it with solid performance. It's never a fault to add talent to a picture, and I think his just kind of emphasizes more of those scenes about the comic book business, because again, we don't dive into that much. When we are there, though, he aids to the film, and he does have a good back and forth with Luke Evans. So.
I did. And Luke Evans did marvelous stuff in this. He was really good. I mean, as they watch him burning his comic book, that was tough to get a...
That's tough for me to watch as a comic book fan. Like, those were fake, right?
I hope they're fake.
I was just thinking the cost of that fire right now. Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's interesting to watch them burn your creation. To so vehemently hate what you've created that they're willing to destroy it. Like that's some heavy stuff right there, and it helps to have the film's kind of title on display to know what we're getting out of it. Because when we see that early on in the film, if you didn't know this was about the creation of Wonder Woman, it might not matter to you as much. But it's really tough to watch, and especially from his point of view, he's not trying to do anything wrong, you know,
no, right.
From the way he sees it, you know.
And he's his flawed good intentions. He's always an advocate for women, but he has a lot of choices of. Well, he got fired from Harvard for being with a student, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like a perfect person. But he's always advocated for women's rights, which probably emphasis why he created this Wonder Woman.
Yeah. That's my favorite element is seeing those moments when he's fighting for Wonder Woman. You know, like he's, you know, especially like I do like those interview scenes. Like I criticize them, but I do like those interview scenes because he's fighting for something that he created. That you know, it's almost a child of his. Is I created this person who's and he describes all that she stands for, all that's good about her, and it just doesn't translate to someone else because they're so focused on what they see as wrong. And that's where I think Evans is at his best in the film. It's not the emotional connection to Elizabeth or Olive. I mean, that's good stuff too, but like it's him fighting for this thing that he created, advocating for himself, and losing. Right. Yeah, you know.
The performances is what really I love about this movie. There's a little bit of beat changes in the editing. I do like the costuming of this, but that's where it kind of falls flat. Is the editing and the story kind of doesn't really dive into his obsessions with lying that he constantly was obsessed about, and what really is the driving force. Obviously, a lot of people think his wife did have some influence of Wonder Woman and what needed to be interjected, and that doesn't get played out as much. But it shows you of what you want to be, and somehow society is not going to accept it.
Yeah, I agree.
In fact, your personal self might even not even accept
the faults I had was we've talked about it, but just like the lack of time spent on the Wonder Woman creation. You put Wonder Woman in the title. So, like, you've told us what we're going to see. That's obvious in the poster. It's obvious in the trailer. You're selling us this movie. I think there should have been more time on that because it would have strengthened the character relationship, is knowing how that relationship strengthened the comic book character. I also agree with you that as the film kind of gets its end point, a lot of things happen really fast.
It cuts. I have it in my notes.
It jumps fast through the end beats to try and basically put together a story at the end. And I think those beats are good. They're strong beats, but we don't have any time at all. Like the stuff after the interview ends is what I'm referring to. I'm not gonna. If you don't know the whole story, I don't want to ruin it for you. But like after the interview ends and he leaves the interview, we jump to a lot of story beats really quick. We have a lot of
with the neighbors and everything, and it's a lot of like, okay, we gotta speed it up here.
Yeah. So that's something I would have liked more of. Yeah. And also breaking down the teacher-student thing. Like it's problematic now because we're still dealing with teachers that have done harm to their students. I just need more time fleshing out what that relationship was like, so that way it didn't make me feel so icky. that just like, because we don't get time talking about that part of the equation because it's so obvious that a student would he's a hot teacher, she's a hot student. Like, more time would have helped kind of pirate that a bit more.
I do like the ending. Even though it fits for those characters, I like the performances. Obviously, the dialogue and stuff, but it fits for what those characters... Obviously, I don't think it really happened, but it fits for the story. I do like the ending.
I don't think it happened in the way that we think. It plays out in a very movie ending fashion,
but it shows
I didn't
Rebecca
think
Hall's,
it betrayed. Yeah, definitely. It showcases. That's the scene. Her scenes in the film, the lie detector scene, is her strongest scene to me personally. But then that one at the end too gets to showcase her range in the fact that, again, she's our compass. She's telling us what are we supposed to be for and what are we supposed to be against in this film, and she's at war in herself. And I think that's one of her stronger scenes as well as that ending.
Yeah. So I would give a mild thumbs up. If you like acting, if you like, the performances, I think really drive this movie. They really outdid themselves with the acting. All three of them. Bella Heathcourt, right?
Yep, Bella Heathcourt. Well, I was a fan of hers in things like, I know people malign that Dark Shadows movie. I thought she was great in it. Yeah. She's done some good work in a number of films, and I think because she's there with Luke Evans and because she's there with Rebecca Hall, we don't talk about her. We haven't talked about her very much in this review, but like she's pretty strong in the film.
Right. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, especially if you almost feel like you're being manipulated. Mm-hmm. But she gets her opportunities to dominate. So it's a lot of play on what Marston was talking about in psychology, of the play as of when it's time to be dominant and submissive. And he plays that all the characters have a time to be dominant and submissive.
Yeah, and she's the character that goes through the most growth in the film. I mean that. I mean that physically and mentally and emotionally, because she has to age with the film. We see a time period shift as the film goes on. She's the young one, so we notice her age much more as she grows. And also just like the way she encounters this within herself. She's a very different person from the beginning to end. Whereas the other two, they do change, but they don't change as much as her.
Yeah. So, have you seen Professor Marston and his Wonder Woman?
Yeah, probably not. Not many people have, but if you have, let us know in the comments section below what your thoughts are. I know it's streaming on Hulu right now. You can catch it out and about.
Really? Okay.
So definitely let us know what you think about the movie, because for me, yeah, definitely recommendation. I liked a lot about it. I just think fleshing out is my issue with the film, and I think fleshing out is not a death sentence for a movie. It's just I wanted more time. We want to know what you thought about it, though. Maybe you think we're crazy on our thoughts about the movie. Maybe you just
I think it's wonderfully acted.
But yeah, I think it's a very well done film overall, and I would like to see Angela Robinson do something else, because I think she has the chops for it.
Yeah.
But hey, you can also do something else by clicking like, and you can do something else by subscribing, and do something even more by checking out our Patreon, patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. The link's down in the description, and then you can help us decide the different themes we're going to have, the different movies we're going to talk about this season. We really appreciate supporting independent content creators. Check out that Patreon.
Join the team.
Yep, and that's all the time for us, guys. Again, check out Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman, and check out us on our next episode. You can find my film reviews on GoTheFilmReviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, on whenever you find podcasts where I interview local filmmakers from the Twin Cities area.
Yep, so that's Wonder Woman on out here.